Good morning. Um, we're going to start this book today, and I'm going to read basically through all the introductory stuff before chapter 1. I got this book a number of months ago, and I read the first couple of chapters to myself, but then I think I sat on it and decided I wanted to wait for the right timing to learn all about this stuff. So it's time to learn more about this regenerative farming and the potentials for, life-changing positive effects across the board. You can hear from that I'm already pretty sold on the concept of regenerative farming, specifically with ruminant animals, changing the landscape and the grass and the soil. I've done enough research to know that the environmental case against beef, even in its current form, which is nothing like this, the factory-produced beef, in its current form, still accounts for a minimal fraction, and what I've seen is that of damage to the environment and the rising temperatures and the ozone, etc. So the rough estimate, and these are rough estimates because it's difficult to say exactly to assess the total costs of a food item and its environmental impact. I mean, assessing that metric is difficult enough. But it's estimated that agriculture accounts for something between 12 and 14% of the world's damage to the environment, whatever that may mean. And that's not nothing, but clearly, even if we fixed all of food, essentially what that means, all of food, we're not going to save our planet that way alone. But animal agriculture, it's estimated, is no more than 4% of that. So we know just from that alone that plant-based agriculture and food production accounts for more damage than does animals. And there is a pretty sneaky, shisty little case that has been made, and you can just tell when you've learned the real science that it's really coming from a corporate entity that wants to promote their cheap carbohydrate, seed oil, plant-based processed foods. I mean, that's just the facts. That's where it came from. That's why you might even believe that animal, cows farting are somehow actually a real damage. I remember thinking that. And that was, I wasn't doing any of this, but I was still eating steak. It's you don't have to be completely anti-meat to have sort of completely bought into the idea that, beef isn't really ideal. And that was sort of why there were cases made for even other animals, like chickens. Chickens don't fart, right? So just eat chickens. And so I've been exploring sort of the periphery of this book and this concept of regenerative agriculture, specifically with cattle, grass-fed cattle. It's How to Produce and Market Natural Beef is this book by Julius Ruechel, with a foreword by Alan Nation, editor of the Stockman Grass Farmer, and Michael Pollan has a little quote. One of the most exciting and hopeful movements in American agriculture today is the return of cattle to grass. Here is just what this movement has been waiting for: an authoritative handbook to help people make the transition. That's Michael Pollan, who is the author of The Omnivore's Dilemma. I remember reading that, actually, as a kid, and for some reason, I forget, it was at school, and yeah, it was just all about food. I don't really remember just about any of it, but yeah. Now there's a glaring misword in his title, which is that he's referring to us as omnivores when we are just technically not omnivores. So that's a technical error. You can say, well, humans do eat plenty of plant foods. I don't know. It's an interesting concept because it's like you would have to argue. This is, boy, I'm really getting off the topic here, but now I'm interested in this. You would have to argue, like, what is your class of eating? Is it based on what you're eating, or is it based on what you're designed to eat? Like, clearly the answer is what you're designed to eat, in which case we're an absolute carnivore. We're a hyper carnivore to the max, 80s style, baby. And so omnivore is just incorrect there. But if you actually look at the world and how we actually eat, we are an omnivore right now. We are consuming so much plant stuff. I'm not sure what the percentage is. By the way, here's another interesting one. Food waste. 12% animal waste. 88% plant-based waste. And I think that, now, granted, I'm sure there's some innocent reasons for why plant stuff is more wasted. But it's, I think it largely comes down to our innate human values. Like, doesn't it just hurt throwing out a chicken breast because you, like, let it go bad? It just hurt, The legions of spinach, which withered and died in my fridge over the years. It's like, and I didn't give a fuck. I was glad to throw that crap in the garbage. It's like, oh darn. It was like this little faux funeral every time. Oh, another week has passed. Spinach gone. We ate the first handful, but the bag was open. The air got in. It withered. It died. We will get more spinach. It will be renewed in the future. Once... Good morning. Anyway. Yeah. So, I had a little extra time to kill because this section is shorter, I guess. But the point is that animal agriculture is not a pollutant. And when you do it this regenerative way, you can transform the landscape in ways that are almost immeasurable. And in fact, the whole process done right, regenerative farming, is carbon neutral or carbon negative. It can have a positive impact. Really, it's carbon negative once you reach the point when the soil is able to absorb more carbon than the entire process is emitting. It's all about carbon capture. This book is not really about any of that. What this book is about is the technical process of raising beef that is grass-fed and then selling it. I mean, this is a business handbook. First and foremost, it'll cover a lot of interesting stuff, at least it did in the first couple chapters, on nature and animals and how species work and seasons and cycles and all these sorts of things that you learn relating to farming. But first and foremost, this is a technical guide that will teach us how to do this, how to become our own regenerative farmers. Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's a big book. And yeah, I'm excited because like getting emotional going to this book. Oh my god. Grass-fed cattle. Okay. To Anne, for a dream, a vision, a whole lot of spice, and a most exciting journey of discovery. Sounded sexual. Okay. So, we're going to do the foreword, the preface, the acknowledgements. Actually, I'm going to skip the acknowledgements until the end. And the introduction. So the foreword is by Alan Nation, editor of the Stockman Grass Farmer. Sounds like a publication rather. Forward. The hardest thing for most livestock producers to realize is that we are not in the cattle business. We are in the grass business. We are, in effect, grass farmers. Grass is the beginning, the end, and everything in between in natural cattle production. It deserves both our respect and our attention. For example, the annual growth cycle of your grass will determine when you should calve, breed, and wean. How closely you mesh these three activities will largely determine your cost of production. Pasture subdivision and controlled rotational grazing give you a steering wheel, clutch, and brake for your four-legged grass harvesters. Consider the folly of trying to harvest a grain crop with a motorized combine without the use of a steering wheel, clutch, and brake. Now, consider that most ranchers attempt to do exactly this. The mineral balance in the soil will largely determine the quality of the grass you grow and its protein and energy content. These two elements will in turn determine the range of potential grass-based enterprises you can realistically consider, and the choices don't end there. For instance, how far you plan to take your cattle on grass will determine the range of cattle genetics from which you can select. If you plan to take them all the way to slaughter on grass, you will need to choose an early maturing, easy fattening breed. The list of considerations for anyone entering a grass-based enterprise goes on and is well covered in this book. The primary point to remember is that virtually every decision you will make in cattle production will come back to grass. Grass-Fed Cattle, the book, serves as an excellent how-to book for grass-based natural cattle production. It is one you will want to read and reread many times. Alan Nation, editor of the Stockman Grass Farmer. So it's like jumping in. We're already how much have we already learned, right? Just from that little introduction by that guy. Holy bejeez nuts. Okay. Preface. In many respects, natural grass-based cattle farming is an entirely new trade that is emerging as an alternative to conventional beef production and marketing. It requires a whole new set of management skills and an entirely different knowledge base about the unique evolutionary relationship between cattle and grass, all of which are foreign to the technology-dependent, commodity-driven, conventional beef industry. But perhaps it is more accurate to say that the lessons first learned by our prehistoric ancestors about cattle and grass are finally converging with our modern understanding of the natural world and our technological advantages. As such, natural grass-based cattle farming is an exciting journey of discovery into our distant pastoral history, while taking us to the forefront of our ecological understanding about plants and animals, and relying on our most innovative technological advances. This is the frontier of the modern natural organic agriculture movement. Grass-Fed Cattle, How to Produce and Market Natural Beef, is the guide I wish I had had when I was searching for advice on how to create a profitable, financially stable, and environmentally sustainable business in the new trade of natural grass-based beef production. It contains all the information vital to the setup, design, management, and marketing of the low-cost, high-profit, grass-based cattle enterprise, from calf birth right through to the steak on the customer's barbecue. It is much more, however, than just a comprehensive production and marketing guide. It is also an essential business management tool that will accompany you through your individual process of designing and managing your own natural grass-based cattle enterprise. It is designed to give you independence, to provide you with choices, and to allow you to confidently take charge of your future. A future that you will have the skills, knowledge, and tools to design yourself by the time you reach the end of this book. The knowledge, techniques, and skills described are universal, regardless of farm size or climate. They are suited equally to farmers new to the trade, established organic farmers looking to integrate cattle into their production systems, experienced family farms seeking to transition from conventional to organic production, and even to the herds of the largest conventional farms looking for new, environmentally sustainable and financially stable production and marketing options. Within these pages, I hope to help you see the cow's world through new eyes. You will never look at a simple weed the same way again. Raindrops will carry a new meaning. A cow's foot will become the most powerful tool at your disposal. you'll discover the fascinating world of cow psychology. Calving season may actually become your favorite and most relaxing time of year. Isn't it though? And I'll help you design your own plan to make a profitable and financially stable living in the most exciting and emotionally rewarding business in the world. Part 1, The Fundamentals of Grass-Based Beef, takes an in-depth look at grass and cattle and the interdependent relationship that evolved between them during the millions of years before domestication, grain surpluses, and modern technological band-aids. It also explores the effect this relationship has on grass, soil, cattle fertility, genetics, and the seasonality of the natural cattle production. The foundation of knowledge serves as the blueprint for all the production techniques described in the remainder of the book, and provides you with the confidence to trust nature as your guide. Like any practical trade, natural grass-based beef production relies on certain tools that allow us to harness this natural relationship between cattle and grass and turn it into a profitable business capable of sustaining our families, communities, and environment. Part 2, Infrastructure and Management, is about this toolbox. Some of the tools are the low-cost infrastructure of natural grass-based beef productions. Others are skills and management principles that allow you to manage your cattle herd and create a saleable product from it. These are the unique tools of your new trade. Part 3, Business Planning and Marketing, describes how to convert the saleable products produced by your farm, cattle, into a profitable business enterprise. This section is about the business end of the trade, the grass finishing, slaughter, marketing, and financial management techniques unique to natural grass-based beef. It is also about building a cohesive plan that allows you to meet your personal, business, and financial goals with the resources available to you in the environmental and market conditions unique to your specific situation. By the time you reach the final section of the book, you will have begun developing an image in your mind about how you want your new natural grass-based beef enterprise to look. Part 4, Your Business Plan, allows you to turn theory into reality. This section provides you with a step-by-step planning framework to identify your goals and guide you through the process of designing your own profitable and financially stable natural grass-based cattle enterprise built on the foundation of knowledge, skills, and tools from parts 1 through 3. By using the framework provided in this section, you can build the blueprint of your production, management, and marketing strategy as it applies to your unique circumstances, your unique market, and your unique personal goals and ambitions. I wish you an exciting journey of discovery. Wow. Introduction. Cattle and grass evolved together for millions of years, each adapting to the other to create an efficient partnership that shaped the landscape of our planet. Long before humans arrived on the scene, cattle were already among the grazing species that roamed the savanna in vast herds, defying predators, keeping encroaching trees at bay, and creating the fantastically rich soils of the ancient grasslands. The remarkable ability of cattle to convert green grass to meat, fat, and milk, their calving ease, their resistance to disease, predators, and drought, and their predictable nature compelled ancient peoples to choose cattle as an ideal species for domestication. I'm just going to add that it's also because that was what we were already eating. Our prehistoric ancestors did not have the technological advantages that our modern conventional beef industry is so dependent upon. Consequently, for their own survival, they jealously guarded the small amount of grain they did grow and never used it to feed their cattle, which had to forage for themselves just as they had always done, their lives determined by nature's seasons and the natural world around them. Human intervention was limited to shepherding the cattle and harvesting the excess meat and milk produced by the herd. Grain did not become part of the cattle diet until after the Industrial Revolution, when machinery created vast grain surpluses, which were recycled through livestock. When we developed our modern technological advantages and began interfering with the natural, seasonal, grass-dependent life cycle of cattle, there was actually a dramatic increase in problems in the cattle industry, ranging from increasingly severe disease outbreaks to widespread calving difficulties, which have become the norm rather than the exception. This trend continues even today. Sadly, we have become so accustomed to the prevalence of all these problems that many farmers now pride themselves more on their emergency response to crisis than on their ability to prevent difficulties through good management practices. The problems we face. Today, diseases from pink eye and mastitis, to pneumonia, coccidiosis, shipping fever, and scours abound. Less common but extremely frightening illnesses such as foot and mouth disease and mad cow disease, bovine, spongiform, encephalopathy have become part of our reality as we have adopted increasingly unnatural cattle production methods. Tractors, fertilizers, feedlots, pesticides, herbicides, antibiotics, diesel fuel, tilled soils, and all of the environmental problems that accompany these modern advantages now dominate the same North American landscape that supported vast numbers of wild bison just a few centuries ago. What's wrong with this picture? With a more advanced scientific understanding of the natural world, agricultural food production should be more, not less, efficient, problem-free, and profitable. Technology should help us capitalize on livestock's natural advantages rather than imposing upon it and forcing it to adapt to artificial production regimens. Instead of spending our time trying to overcome nature from the seat of a tractor, we should be out in our pastures, cooperating with nature to produce grass-fed cattle in an enjoyable, stress-free way modeled after nature's example. Our greater understanding of cattle and the natural world should translate into grass-based cattle enterprises that are resistant to extreme weather, market turmoil, drought, disease pressure, feed crisis, predation, and other common causes of economic downfall. But these enterprises are few and far between. How can we change? My experience. I returned to my family's beef ranch in 1998 to take over the farm management. The farm had struggled immensely during the 10 years since my father was incapacitated by a severe head injury. Despite valiant efforts by previous managers to turn around the financial situation, the farm had become unprofitable. My quest to save the farm and restore its profitability took me on a fascinating, though desperate, journey that dramatically changed my conventional perspective on beef production and marketing, and significantly altered my understanding of the relationship between cattle and grass. Having an education in economic geology, not agriculture, I felt quite unprepared for the task of fixing the farm. I was trained as a rock and ore detective, not as a conventional farm operator. So I set out to rectify my lack of agricultural education by diving into the piles of conventional agricultural literature and sources of information that I was familiar with from my childhood. Agriculture newspapers, agriculture magazines, equipment dealership publications, plant variety trials, farm fairs, equipment demonstrations, agricultural extension services, and advice from the fertilizer dealer and feed mill. I thought I could balance the unprofitable accounting books with my enthusiastic efforts. I'd take on more enterprises, find the glitches in those already on my plate, and try to grow bigger and more efficient. I soon realized that this approach was only taking the farm farther down the same unprofitable path. It was a road of drudgery that often seemed like voluntary slavery. The new equipment, new infrastructure, bigger workload, constantly changing technologies, extra long work hours, aborted new ventures, persistent disease and calving problems, and lack of tangible results were wearing everyone thin. I knew farming wasn't supposed to be a get-rich-quick scheme. I had heard that preached often enough at the coffee shops and auction barns. But if farming was supposed to be about a healthy lifestyle and being closer to the land and animals, I sure didn't see where that came in while spending 14 hours a day sitting in the cab of a tractor or lying on my back underneath one, soaking up oil in my beard and cursing the next mechanical disaster. If it was such a wonderful lifestyle, then how could I justify the long hours, mud, veterinary medicines, stress, and enormous financial cost of having such an enviable life? If that was not the road to success and enjoying life, what was? There had to be a more natural, healthy way to work. A revelation. Then, a number of occurrences and changes coincided excuse me. Then, a revelation. Then, a number of occurrences and changes coincided to completely alter my outlook on farming. It began when my wife and I switched to eating organic food. Oh, hi, bird. Trying to read here. Yep. You're welcome for the food. Little bird feeder. He's talking to that guy. So it began when my wife and I switched to eating organic food, despite my displeasure about the higher grocery bill. The changes to my health were remarkable. I had been a severe hay fever and allergy sufferer since early childhood, but organic nutrition began to change that. As I first began exploring organic farming as an alternative solution to the farm's problems, my mind became focused on fulfilling the roles of organic certification and enduring the minimum 3-year transition period required to achieve certified organic status. Although the concept of organics theoretically made sense and my improving health convinced me that I was on the right track, the requirements for certification seemed like a merciless checklist of things that I would have to eliminate, that I had come to depend on for the very survival of the farm. This, however, is the crux for every new organic farmer. How do we eliminate the herbicides, pesticides, hormones, synthetic fertilizers, and so much else while still producing crops and livestock that are in good enough shape to make it to market, without withering away or dying en route? As my health improved, I began noticing its delicate balance. Although I was leading a relatively allergy-free life among all the farm pollens and dust, I still had a tremendous sensitivity to chemicals. Exposure to certain chemicals, whether the heady vapors of a new carpet, secondhand smoke, an herbicide application, or the smell of fresh paint, could completely disrupt my equilibrium. Fatigue, stress, poor quality food, nervousness, and injury seemed to magnify these triggers 100-fold. As the old allergies reappeared, I'd grow irritable and distracted, and I was no longer able to perform at my peak capacity. I began to view my immune system as a bucket that I could fill with any variety of stresses without ill effects, but only to a certain point. Once the bucket was full, a single additional drop would make it overflow and cause my ill health to return. I realized then that the key to my health and productivity lies in managing my life to avoid overfilling the bucket, so there's always room for the normal stress of unexpected daily challenges. The same is true for animals and plants. If animals and plants are under stress, chemical or otherwise, their resilience is compromised, making them prone to pests, disease, and poor nutrient uptake. They struggle to compete with weeds, pests, predators, and even each other if they are exposed to foreign substances and environmental conditions that they have not had the opportunity to adapt to over thousands of years. What is the true natural potential of our plants and livestock? And how many problems can we alleviate by raising them in natural conditions as similar as possible to those in which they evolved to thrive? Health and productivity in any ecosystem, whether it is my own body, that of a cow, or the whole farm, is driven not by the elimination of chemicals and other ingredients restricted by the organic certifying agencies, but also by eliminating stress, so that natural evolutionary advantages can be fully expressed. Cattle stress comes in a multitude of forms: nutritional, chemical, social, climatic, or weather-related. The stresses of light deprivation or excess, heat and cold, pests, even the simple removal of a key player in the function of the soil, plants, or rumen, or other part of the larger ecosystem. In sum, any departure from cattle's natural balance with their optimal evolutionary habitat can induce stress. Modern medicine teaches us to think symptomatically. We focus on reacting to the symptoms of disease. Thus, while we have become experts at resolving various ailments and diseases, these are really just the symptoms of a much greater underlying problem. We rarely seek to discover what knocked out of balance our perfectly designed systems in the first place, so that disease could find its way in. After all, aren't disease, pests, weeds, and predators designed to remove those individuals that are not able to function optimally in their particular environmental niche? Isn't that how evolution works? Actually, crisis is merely nature's way of pointing out that its delicate balance has been disturbed. When the symptoms of crisis appear, consider them giant arrows directing your attention to the underlying problem. We need to address not only these symptoms, but also whatever caused the weakness that precipitated the crisis so we can avoid it in the future. For example, a predator problem with coyotes is a symptom of an out-of-balance livestock management system, not a signal that there are too many coyotes. Something in the balance of the farm ecosystem is making our farm a target for coyotes or is giving them an unnatural advantage. The underlying cause might be that we are calving in late winter or early spring, lean times when these calves are the only easy food source. To recognize this, however, we have to stop blaming the coyote for our problems and look more closely at our management role. Similarly, we should not consider a pneumonia outbreak as merely an incidence of disease to be fixed by a course of antibiotics. It is a clear sign that something in our management style is compromising the immunity of the herd. What is causing this stress? Perhaps we are weaning during the rainy season, or perhaps the collection of manure and mud around the feed bunks needs to be addressed by a different wintering system. In order for a farm to be a thoroughly viable enterprise, the farmer him or herself and the farm's profitability must also be factored into its ecosystem. In the search for a more natural approach to raising cattle, it is not realistic simply to open the gate so our cattle can regain their natural balance while we turn to hunting and gathering. We have to live in this world too, which means that we have to consider our financial goals, marketing, personal priorities, and involvement on the farm when we analyze the source of symptomatic farm problems. Personal stress, loss of profitability, a sagging fence, and a lineup of machines needing repair all suggest that we have a role in the problem. A new way of thinking. As my outlook on farming evolved, I realized that I had confused profitability and productivity. An easy mistake to make in our volume-oriented world. Volume-oriented, commodity-driven marketplace. How many head of cattle we own, how many pounds each calf weighs when we sell it, how many hours of work we perform each day, how many gallons of milk each cow produces, how many bushels of grain or tons of forage we grow per acre, and how much each individual calf is worth on sale day are often how we measure the success of our farms and our relative success as farmers. But high productivity does not automatically equal high profit. The more effort we put in, the better results we get, right? Not necessarily. We have to think in terms of high profit, not high productivity. The difference may seem subtle at first, but it requires an enormous shift in focus. We must begin by measuring our success in terms of net profit per acre, not on the illusion of profitability created by our focus on maximizing yields, such as our obsession with producing the biggest possible calves at weaning. We should value ourselves by the results of our efforts instead of priding ourselves on the effort itself. Isn't it enough to eke out a living from our maximum productivity? It isn't enough to eke out a living from our maximum productivity. To maximize our profit, we need to adjust our priorities toward minimizing expenses and addressing log jams in our production systems before we focus on boosting production. Switching to a natural grass-based beef production and marketing scenario isn't easy. We have to replace time, machinery, effort, and many unnecessary expenses with knowledge. The greatest tools at our disposal are the lessons we can draw from the wild herds that roam the world's grasslands, much as our livestock's ancestors did before we domesticated them. Before we became so enamored of our modern technological solutions that we let them eclipse nature's solutions to our production challenges. Although natural grass-based beef production may be new to us, nature's great herds, grasslands, and soils have been succeeding at it for a very long time, without our help. These examples provide us with a reference, insight, and large-scale working model against which we can measure our ideas and will guide us towards sound, positive, simple solutions to our production challenges. Let's begin. End of the introduction. And now we're on to part 1, the fundamentals of grass-based beef. Chapter 1 and all that. Yeah, pretty engaging, right? For raising, basically how to do cows. This is so cool. I'm going to cut it off here. I thought it was funny when he was saying that we can't just turn the cows loose and then start hunting them again. I'm like, that wouldn't work, right? We couldn't do that. Just making sure. But no, this is better, because we can more actively. This is what it comes down to. This is like the fundamental concept of nature and humanity and our relationship to it. And there's a lot of that in this, like, regenerative farming. It may seem technical, and I imagine this book will get pretty technical, but fundamentally, this is the story of how human beings, we're never out of nature. We're still in it. Every single day, we're in nature. We surround ourselves with a lot of civilization that, I guess, sort of protects us from some of the harms of nature and keeps it at bay to a certain extent, but it never is at bay because we are it. And human beings can absolutely have a positive growth effect on the world, the environment, animal species, plant species, soil. Vitamins and minerals abound, right? We absolutely can have a positive effect. We're always in nature, and it is the way we act and the way we act collectively and the decisions we make and the way we spend our time and our priorities and our values. These things affect the earth. And what's happening here is, in this book, is a technical guide for how to be just the greatest steward and the greatest lion and a protector of food and nature. Because we've been in nature this whole time and we've been destroying it. So we're still in it. We still have an invested interest in nature completely. And so this is not just a how-to guide on anything. It's a how-to guide on how to save the planet and the humans and the animals and everything. Okay. So really excited for part 1, the fundamentals of grass-based beef production. And will I soon be starting with chapter 1, part 1. All right, see you later.